Satan tempts me to despair and tells me of the guilt within. Upward I look and see Him there, who made an end to all my sin. Because the sinless Savior died, my sinful soul is counted free. For God the just is satisfied to look on Him and pardon me. To look on Him and pardon me. Behold Him there, the risen Lamb, my perfect, spotless righteousness, the great unchangeable I am, the King of glory and of praise. One with Himself, I cannot die. My soul is purchased with His blood. My life is hid with Christ on high, with Christ my Savior and my God, with Christ my Savior and my God. One with Himself, I cannot die. My soul is purchased with His blood. My life is hid with Christ on high, with Christ my Savior and my God, with Christ my Savior and my God.
Good morning and welcome to Ebenezer Church, or message from the snug, here on this wonderful Sunday morning. I hope everyone is doing well and they're feeling okay and doing better. Thanks for anyone that wished me well. I apologise for Friday, but my wife was sick for about 2 days straight with a bug. Our reading this morning is from Hebrews. It's Hebrews chapter 7 and it is verses 1 to 25. So it's a bit of a reading this morning, but I hope you follow along and I hope that you listen to what the Lord has to say. So Hebrews chapter 7 verses 1 to 25. The King of Righteousness. It's headed in here. For this Melchizedek, King of Salem, priest of the Most High God, who made Abraham, returning from the slaughter of kings, and blessed him. To whom also Abraham gave a 10th part of all, first being translated King of Righteousness, and then also King of Salem, meaning King of Peace. Without father, without mother, without genealogy, having neither beginning of days nor end of life, but made like the Son of God, remains a priest continually. Now consider how great this man was, whom even the patriarch Abraham gave a 10th of the spoils. And indeed, those who are of the sons of Levi, who receive the priesthood, have a commandment to receive tithes from the people according to the law, that is, from their brethren, though they have come from the loins of Abraham. But he whose genealogy is not derived from them received tithes from Abraham, and blessed him who had the promises. Now beyond all contradiction, the lesser is blessed by the better. Here mortal men receive tithes, but there he receives them, of whom it is witnessed that he lives. Even Levi, who received tithes, paid tithes through Abraham, so to speak. For he was still in the loins of his father when Melchizedek met him. Therefore, if perfection were through the Levitical priesthood, for under it the people received the law, what further need was there that another priest should rise according to the order of Melchizedek, and not be called according to the order of Aaron? For the priesthood being changed, of necessary there is also a change of the law. For him of whom these things are spoken belonged to another tribe, for which no man has officiated at the altar. For it is evident that our Lord arose from Judah, of which tribe Moses spoke nothing concerning priesthood. And it is yet far more evident if, in the likeness of Melchizedek, there arises another priest, who has come not according to the law of the fleshly commandment, but according to the power of endless life. For he testifies, "You are a priest forever, according to the order of Melchizedek." For on the one hand there is annulling of the former commandments because of its weakness and unprofitabiliness, for the law made nothing perfect. On the other hand, there is the bringing in of better hope, through which we draw near to God. And insomuch as he was not made priest without an oath, for they have become priests without an oath, but he with an oath by him who said to him, "The Lord has sworn and will not relent. You are a priest forever, according to the order of Melchizedek." By so much more, Jesus has become a surety of a better covenant. Also, there were many priests because they were prevented by death from continuing. But he, because he continues forever, has an unchangeable priesthood. Therefore he is able to serve to the uttermost to those who come to God through him, since he always lives to make intercession for them. May the Lord bless the reading of his word. Today is a celebration day within the church. It is Ascension Sunday, the closest Sunday to the historical day that we believe Christ ascended to heaven, which is the 40th day of Easter, or the 39th day after Easter Sunday. And for those who are trying to work that out, that was last Thursday. And where the 21st was Ascension Thursday, and so today we celebrate Ascension Day. And today I want to look at Jesus Christ as the work he does as the term is priest, or in this case a high priest. Now, I'm not going to go over each of those 25 verses in detail, which I'm sure many of you are quite happy with me not doing that. I want to get the big picture of this passage and get to the main point. The main point, the big picture, is of Christ's superiority, or Christ's superior priesthood of the Old Testament priests, or what we read about the tribes of Levi. And the main point of it is in verse 25. Whenever you see the word hence or therefore in the Bible, one thing you need to question is, if you see a therefore, what is it there for? It means there's a great conclusion from all the preceding verses, the truth that's been laid down. It's a conclusion to that. In this case, it's a conclusion about Christ's priesthood. Verse 25 is the main point, the conclusion of it all. Hence also he is able to save forever those who draw near to God through him, since he's always lives to make intercession for them, or act on our behalf. Verses 1 to 24 may be complex, they may be difficult to understand without an earnest mental effort. But this verse 25 is wonderfully plain, and it has been broken down into three very easy parts. Christ is able to save, a great promise. He always lives to make intercession for us, or act on our behalf. This eternal intercession and eternal salvation are for those who draw near to Christ, or grow close to God through Christ. Think about the relationship between those two. That Christ is able to save forever, and that Christ always lives to act on our behalf with God. What's the connection? It's made explicit in these verses, and it's extremely important. It says that he is able to save us forever, since or because he always lives to make intercession. He always lives to act on our behalf for us. In other words, our future eternal salvation hangs on Christ's future eternal intercession for us. It answers the question we need to be saved from. We need to be clear about this, especially when we talk about those who don't share our faith, who don't believe what we believe. For them, the very term salvation or being saved may not carry the same meaning the Bible gives these terms. So we need to be clear what the Bible means. What are we being saved from, according to this verse? The connection between eternal salvation excuse me, and eternal intercession gives us at least one solid answer. And it is, I think, the most basic and most important answer. So what is it? If to be saved forever, we need Christ to act on our behalf for us forever with God, then what's the implication? What is it that we need saving from? Well, the implication is that we need to be saved from God. Specifically, we need to be saved from the wrath of God that burns against all ungodliness and unrighteousness. Many people have this idea that God is Father Christmas on a cloud, please stop that thinking. Christ can save us from the wrath of God because he intercedes, he acts on our behalf with God. He continually puts himself between the Father and us as a shield against the white-hot anger against sin. Hebrews 10:30-31 says, "We know him who says, 'Vengeance is mine, I will repay.' And again, the Lord will judge his people." It's a terrifying thing to fall into the hands of the living God. If anyone ever wants to have a really interesting read or interesting thing, go look at Sinners in the Hands of an Angry God, a sermon. And until we get this firmly fixed in our mind and clear in our minds, if you read the book of Hebrews, it won't make sense. The major problem in our world, in our lives, is not our troubled marriages, wayward children, our financial pressures, or our failing health, or cultural degeneration. The main problem in the world, everyone's problem, is how to be reconciled with God. That's our main problem. The biblical answer was, of course, the priesthood. In the Old Testament, they set the priest to act on behalf of the people, make sacrifices for them, so they would have their sins placated. But in this case, the superior priesthood of Christ is the main thing. The reason there are priests in the Old Testament, as I said, is that priests are needed to intercede for us with God. They enter into the holy place where we are not allowed to go. They take sacrifices for us so that our sins will be forgiven. And the Old Testament priestly system was meant to teach us about our sin and the holiness and the wrath of God and the inescapable judgment that is coming on us. And the point of all of this was God has made a way to get right with God. He provided priests in the Old Testament, and then he provided his son, the final high priest. So the reason for this talk about Christ's relationship to Melchizedek in these first 24 verses is because the eternal superior priesthood of Jesus is the only hope of salvation. God never changes. So there is only one hope for sinners like us. We must have a faithful high priest who will act on our behalf, who will be on our side forever. We need a king of righteousness. We need a king of peace. We need someone without beginning and end. Someone who has an indestructible life. Someone who will never die and will never need it to be replaced. We need someone greater than anyone that's ever been. Greater than, in terms of Christianity and Judaism, greater than Abraham, greater than Levi. Something like Melchizedek, who blessed Abraham and who received tithes from Abraham, and in a sense from Levi in Abraham. We need a greater priest, so much greater than verse 11 says. There was no perfection through the priesthood as we knew it or as we understand it from the Bible. the Old Testament priesthood could do, all they could do was point towards the one superior priest whose sacrifice of himself and whose eternal intercession would guarantee eternal salvation for God's people. So the first implication of verse 25 is that all this truth about priesthood is because we need saving. We need saving. We need saving from our sins and the wrath of God against those sins. God's way of solving that problem is priesthood. This is not ours to figure out or solve. God has to do it for us. And he has done it. He ordained a priest, his son. And don't make a mistake here. It's not as though Jesus the priest loves us and God the Father doesn't. Don't get that misunderstood. God the Father ordains the priesthood for our salvation. It's his idea. He sends his own son. And he loves him infinitely. And this is the love of God rescuing us from the wrath of God in such a way that the justice of God is vindicated, so that we see the glory of God. Now, the second great implication of this main verse is that our future salvation depends on the active work of Christ forever and ever, not just on the past work of Christ or on our past decisions or commitments. It says that Christ is able to save forever, since he always lives and makes intercession for us. In other words, he would not be able to save us forever if he did not go on acting on our behalf forever. It means our salvation is secure, as Christ's priesthood is indestructible. This is why we need a priest so much greater than any human. Christ's deity secures his indestructible priesthood for us. This means we should not talk about our salvation in static terms, the way we often do, as if I did something once in an act of decision, and Christ did something once when he died and rose again, and that's it. That's all there is to it. You know, I don't often talk about the Greek. The English language is very static, but obviously as part of trying to look at this, I've read the Greek. The Greek has this term, or has this way of expressing something, certain verb that basically means things are continuing on and on and on. Quite often the things that talk about the cross and salvation are these types of verbs. It's not a static thing. Christ dying once in those terms, that's not all there is to it. This very day I am being saved by eternal intercession of Jesus in heaven. Jesus is praying for us that our salvation. And what is this intercession? John Owen gives us a beautiful summary of it in a 350-year-old commentary of this verse. The safest conception that we can have of the intercession of Christ is his continuous appearance for us in the presence of God by virtue of his office as the high priest over the house of God, representing the efficiency of his outpouring of blood, accompanied with tender care, love and desire for the welfare, supply, deliverance and salvation of the church. Therefore, the presentation of his person before the throne of God on our behalf, the representation of his death, his outpouring of blood and sacrifice for us, which gives power, life and efficiency unto his intercession. Both these do not render it prayer or intercession, for intercession is prayer. Wherefore there it is in it a request and an offering unto God of his desires and will for the church, attended with care, love and compassion. We are saved eternally by the eternal prayers and advocation of Jesus in heaven as our high priest. He prays for us, and his prayers are answered because he prays perfectly on the basis of his perfect sacrifice. It says that he is able to save because he intercedes. That is, because he prays. And it says that he is doing this forever. What do we need forever in order to be saved? Well, let's just stay with this verse to answer that. We need to draw near to God through him. He is able to save forever those who draw near to God through him. The verb here, draw near to God, is a tense that I was talking about a minute ago. It's a present continuous action, not a single action in the past. It's not saying God is able to save those forever who'd once drawn near to him, but who are going on drawing near to God. If we do not go on drawing near to God, we have no warrant for thinking that we are being saved by the Lord Jesus. But if this is true, then is not this drawing near one of the things that Jesus intercedes for us with the Father? If not, then his intercession leaves one out, the main thing required of us for our salvation, which leaves us very precariously. But there are many reasons for thinking he does not leave this out. One is that Hebrews 13:21 says that God is working in us what is pleasing in his sight through Jesus Christ. One of the things that is pleasing in his sight is that his people keep on drawing near to him forever and ever, and so on. He is working in us this very thing. Verse 21 says he is doing this through Jesus Christ, which means at least that Christ has purchased this grace for us by his death, and that Christ prays and asks the Father for it on the basis of that death. In other words, when the writer tells us that drawing near to God is what qualifies us for the eternal saving work of the high priest, he doesn't mean to say that our high priest leaves us alone in our bent and sinful nature to draw near to God on our own. Rather, our high priest intercedes for us and asks the Father to do just what Hebrews 13:21 says he will do through Jesus Christ. Let me illustrate this by the way we look when our high priest was on earth. In Luke 22:31-32, Jesus says to Peter, "Simon, Simon, behold, Satan has determined permission to sift you like wheat. But I have prayed for you that your faith may not fail. And you, when once you have turned again, strengthen your brothers." So already Jesus was interceding for his own when he was on earth. And when he was praying for our faith, that our faith will not fail. See, especially his high priestly prayer in John 17, which I call the Lord's Prayer. And he was so confident in his prayer for Peter that he said, "When once you have turned again," not if you turn again. So even though Peter stumbled when he denied Jesus, his faith didn't fail utterly. That is what the Lord prays for us. This is one more piece of our great security and our hope in this great epistle of assurance. Is it not a wonderful thing to know that God bids us come? That this great holy God of righteousness and wrath says, "Draw near to me through my Son, your high priest. Draw near to me, draw near to me." This is his closing invitation today. Draw near to me through your high priest. Draw me near to me in confession and prayer and meditation and trust and praise. Come, I will not cast you out, for Christ is able to save forever those who draw near to God through him, since he always lives to make intercession for them. Amen. God bless you all, folks. I hope that you have a wonderful week and that you have many conversations with friends and families, and that very soon we will see the end of this social distancing and we're able to meet again. But in the meantime, look towards the Lord, our God, for peace and salvation. God bless you all. Amen.